What is up, guys, and welcome back to the Sweat It Out podcast. We're very excited for today's guest. He's a speaker, author, husband, and father. He is the #1 money mentor, and he was a former pro snowboarder. You guys have probably seen him host the HGTV Risky Builders. Help us welcome Chris Naugle. What's up, brother?
Hey, man, thanks. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. I appreciate you guys having me on.
We're definitely excited to have you on here too, man, and definitely excited to learn more about you, your story, and how you even got started in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting story. I grew up like many people, just lower middle class family. My dad was an alcoholic, wasn't really part of my life, and my mom raised me. It was a massive struggle for her, but she did teach me some things. Even though we didn't have resources, she taught me how to be resourceful, and she taught me how to dream. I was always an artistic kid, and I would draw everything I wanted: skateboards, snowboards, BMX bikes, dirt bikes, whatever it is I wanted. I would see it in a magazine, I would draw it, and I would visualize it. Now, we all have read the books today, and we all know that, Think and Grow Rich and all these books that talk about visualization and dreaming. I was a kid. I knew nothing about this. This is just the only way I could have something was to draw it and think about it. And it eventually became real. And I never paralleled that until much later in life. And as I went through childhood, this is kind of what I did. We didn't have money for really anything. So I just worked. I worked on a farm at 14, and I got a big boy job at 16, working for a restaurant. Like many of us, when we turn 16, that's the first job we get, is at restaurants. But this restaurant was different because the owner was an complete jerk and treated me just like a piece of garbage. I literally got clinically depressed working there, and one day I quit, not knowing this. That was actually the moment where I quit trading hours for dollars. Came home to mom, said, "Mom, this is not what I want. I'm sorry, but I had a plan, right? You always need that backup plan." And I said, "I want to open a clothing line in the basement." So at 16 years old, I became an entrepreneur. Now, back then, I would never have said I was an entrepreneur. I didn't really even understand it. I just needed to make money. So I printed shirts with my art teacher, Mr. Mahalski, sold them in school, got friends to sell them, ended up traveling to snowboard contests and selling them to other shops on consignment. And then they would make orders. And this is just how I did it. For a course of a year, as I was trying to become a pro snowboarder, I went on the road. I was a quote unquote entrepreneur and traveling salesman, selling my clothing while I was snowboarding. That store, or that clothing line, ended up turning into a chain of snowboard stores that I got the idea when I was 17, having this clothing line. I needed a shop, and it was going to be a $70,000 price tag to open my first store in the Lockport Mall. And this is going back to 1993. If I'm dating myself, so you guys can see how old I am. And I remember I went around trying to raise money to all the people that, 17-year-old would try to raise money from, your aunts, your uncles. You literally go out there and you figure out, who's got money? Mom, which one of our family members is the wealthiest? Well, Uncle Jim works for the nursing home. He does okay. Great. Uncle Jim, pitch him the whole idea. No. And then my dad, who really wasn't there much, but I pitched it to him, and he said, "Son, you should just get a job at the factory." That didn't turn well because he just never really was into my dream. So that was that part. And my dream almost died. And, I think this is an important lesson that I want to get off to your audience is, in life, there's two types of people. There's successful people and there's unsuccessful people. And we can kind of go into the granular levels of that, but there's only one thing that makes somebody successful, and that's creation. Earl Nightingale says it best in The Strangest Secret in the World. The difference between success and failure is one thing, and that is creation. Well, everybody was trying to get me to buy into their failed realities by saying, "No, this dream is silly. You're going to lose all your money, kid." It's kind of like the movie, "You're going to shoot your eye out, kid." Well, maybe, but let me do it. This is my dream, not yours. But they try to get you to believe that you're not going to make it. You're going to fail because they failed. They never chased their dreams. My mother, who never chased her dreams, saw this dream dying, and she put her house that she got in a divorce. The only thing my mother had in the world was this 700 square foot, 2-bedroom ranch. And she put that house on the line so that her punk snowboard son could chase his dream. And in November of 94, Fat Man Board Shops, spelled PHAT, took shape. We opened the doors, and that business still today, and you guys can count however many years that is open. I sold it in 2010, but it's still thriving. It's still one of the best known core snowboard shops in the area. So that was like my early years. I went on to be a pro snowboarder during that period of time. And I was living a fantasy world, guys. I literally, like, sometimes in life we get on a stride and we get, that thing that we want, we've always been striving for. And it just seems like you're in the clouds, you're living a dream. And then all of a sudden reality hit me I don't know what day it was, but one afternoon where I was driving to my brand new shop that we just opened up. And I heard on the radio that a plane had hit a tower. And I'm like, wow, is that just like an accident? What happened? And then another plane hit. And we know what we're talking about, right? This is when 9/11 happened. Well, 9/11 spun off to, go into a deep recession for 3 years. And that recession was the first recession I ever lived through, or that I remember living through as a recession. And my business took a huge hit. This was the point where I was forced back to work. And where that landed me is, all right, I got to pay for my truck and things. The business isn't doing well. Some people would just say, oh, well, I'm just going to close. I wasn't willing to do that. I was living a dream. I'm not going to let this dream go that easy. So I went to Little Caesars where my best friend worked delivering pizzas, and I applied. Luckily, they weren't hiring. So I put my resume out, and only people, and this is funny, folks. I want you to envision this as you're thinking about this story. I'm a punk snowboard kid, right? I wear beanies. I wear hoodies. Never put a suit on in my life, maybe once for a wedding or a funeral, but like that would be the extent of it. And the only people that call me back from my resume, which is very, it's one page. I mean, it says 16, started a company, 17, started a store, pro snowboarder. That was my resume. Went to a community college, 2 years, blah, blah, blah. Wall Street seemed to like me. I don't know why, but I got interviews with multiple Wall Street firms, and they coerced me with, hey kid, you could drive this car and all this stuff. And I was bought in. So at that moment, I now had to show up to work every day in a navy blue, gray, or black suit. So think about how messed up that is, that I go from the perfect life to now I'm wearing a suit every day and I'm in Wall Street. It was a very difficult mind shift for me and pivot in my life. And so difficult that I literally had to go and find a snowboard shop that made suits, clothing line that made suits. And Volcom, the company that I'm still wearing today, made suits. So my bridge into that was, hey, listen, nobody's going to hate me in the snowboard world if I wear Volcom suits. So I ordered a whole bunch of black, navy blue, and gray Volcom suits. And that's how I made the transition. Now, Wall Street was an interesting thing. It was totally out of the norm of what I was used to. And I still ran my stores. I still snowboarded, but every day from 7 a.m. till 5, 6 p.m, I worked in Wall Street. And when I got there, I remember, I was this young kid, 23 years old, didn't even have money to go to lunch. So I brought little Tupperwares with mulberries from the tree at the apartment where I lived. And I'd look at all the outside offices. And you've seen this in the movies, from Boiler Room to Wolf of Wall Street, and there's the guys in the middle, the bullpen, which is me. We just pick the phone up and call. And there's all the guys in the outside offices who are the $1 million producers. I watched them intently and I said, how do I get one of those offices? And what I realized is they got there about 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. They left for 2 hours for lunch, probably doing the you guys know that movie, probably doing that, drinking scotch and whiskey, but who knows? And then they left at 4:30. And I said, if I want one of those, and I'd talked to some of these guys, I said, you just got to work hard, kid. Keep calling, keep dialing, keep getting clients. It's a relationship business. I said, to get what they have, all I have to do is what they're unwilling to do. Started getting there at 7 a.m, get my paperwork all lined up so that when the phones were hot and the market was open, I'm ready to roll. Work through lunch. I found that people actually picked the phones up during lunch. And then at the end of the day, when everybody else went home or went to the country club and golfed, I went out and I saw people at their kitchen tables. In a short period of time, I became the number one financial advisor for that firm. I had 700 plus clients. I was making a killing. I mean, going from the most I ever made in the snowboard world was about 40 grand to now I'm making in the hundreds. It was, again, now I'm living a different fairy tale. Now I've got money. I'm still snowboarding, but I'm not maybe as dedicated as I used to be to that. And my stores were almost more of a hindrance, but I turned it over to my managers. And this was going all the way till 2008. I'd flipped a couple houses in there because why not? And then in 2008, I bought a strip mall, a dilapidated paint store that was going to be a 3-unit strip mall because one of my leases came due. And you all know what happened. So remember, .com crash was the first recession, forced me into Wall Street. Now I'm in Wall Street making a ton of money, completely oblivious that this giant recession was about to hit me. And I borrowed $380,000 from a hard money lender at 15%. And then it all let loose. The Great Recession hit. It brought me to my knees. I got to be one payment from being completely bankrupt with these guys that I borrowed money from. And they were not good people. You all know people that aren't good people, right? And if you take something from these people and you don't give it back to them, well, they don't just take the plaza back, you know, and I knew this. And I started to think, okay, well, should I get out of Dodge? Like, should I run? And I wasn't a runner. So I went home one night. My girlfriend, the trophy girlfriend, had just moved into my house. And I said to her, I said, sweetie, I need your help. I need your help paying the mortgage. I need your help paying the utilities. My friend Pete's going to move into the bedroom down the hall, and my friend Jessica's going to move in upstairs. Any questions? Now, I guess maybe the ego or whatever you want to call it for making money, you know, as a Wall Street guy, I just thought, hey, this would be okay. My friends later told me, dude, you had like a 10% shot of this chick sticking around. She should have left your dumb ass, but she didn't. I think she liked me. We're now married. We got a 24-month-old daughter now. And that was the most pivotal period of time in my life, because during that period, I had another shift. Stayed in Wall Street, but my focus became real estate, became Main Street, because I watched all my wealthy clients do better during this period when all my other clients that were taking my advice, investing in stocks, doing the things I advised them to do, they just lost everything. But these real estate investors, they were doing well. They were buying more. So I did what Warren Buffett said. I started buying real estate. 2009 to 14, I bought 36 units. And I did it literally just, you guys all know the pure grit, just scraping it together. And in 14, I thought I had made it. And then all of a sudden the bank drops a bomb on me when I brought my 37th unit. And they said, Mr. Naugle, we can't lend to you anymore. You don't fit in the little box called debt to income ratio. And that's when it all tumbled down again. I hit one of the worst periods of time in my life. All those cars, the Audis, the dream house that me and Larissa bought, all gone. All 36 units. I had to sell them all. Some at a loss, some at a gain. And I spiraled into the worst depression I'd ever been in my life. And everything, you know, during this period, I had sold off the stores. I had sold that strip mall just to make ends meet and buy more real estate. And now all of a sudden I'm losing it all again. And folks, listen, like when you go through these periods, you can see it's just been a roller coaster ride. You start to learn who you really are and what you do and why you do it. And during this period, which would have been 2014, I had to figure out, who is Chris Naugle? What do I want? And when I came out of this mess, which took a month in Thailand to do it, I came back and I said, all right, you know what? I gotta get good at one or two things. I'm doing too many things. I'm a pro-snowboarder. I was running shops. I'm a real estate guy. I'm a financial advisor. I had an identity crisis. I didn't even know who I was. But I went to a mastermind that cost $5,000. I had no idea how I was going to pay for this mastermind. I maxed the credit card out. And I went there and I met a couple guys that were way more successful. And I was just like, I don't even belong. But the guy that put the mastermind on, Greg Reed, I went to him and I said, Greg, I need the best advice you can give me. Puts his hand on my shoulder and he says, I'm going to give you the best advice. And he says, give your best stuff away for free. And then I met another two guys, Greg and Mike. There's two Gregs in this story. Greg and Mike, and they got up in front of one of the events, one of the days at the mastermind. They started talking about money. I perked up. I'm the money guy, right? I'm the Wall Street guy. Nobody knows more about money than me. I've been doing this for 14 years at this point. And start talking about money. And it was the complete opposite of everything I'd ever been taught in Wall Street. I mean, literally, like nothing they were talking about made any logical sense for everything I'd been taught. And what I found is I went on this journey from 14 all the way, and I'm still on the journey today, of studying the wealthy. When I say wealthy, I mean tens of millions to billions of dollars. I've been surrounded by multiple billionaires. I have many friends that are multiple billionaires, or billionaires, you know, in the billions, I should say. And what I've learned is that what the wealthy do with money is the opposite of what all of us are taught to do with money. And that's what I teach today. I teach the secrets of the wealthy. I teach how people can change one thing. And in doing that, they would learn what I learned in 2014, sitting with Mike at Cheesecake Factory in Utah, when he dropped it on me and told me what he did and how he made money and how he did everything. And I literally, if you guys all have these moments in your life where something happens that changes the entire course of everything you do. And that was that moment. And I've just been on that journey.
Chris, that was an amazing story. So much in there to unpack. Like the journey you went through was Chris, how old are you? You don't mind me asking you, man?
Sure. 44.
44 and going through all that. Wow. Okay.
At a young age.
At a young age too. That is not easy. Started a business, went through Wall Street, lost it all, came back, got it all. So I have two questions. Number one, because you just said something here about what are some of the moves right now that I guess the wealthy are doing that right now people are not doing? They're doing the opposite. That's one question. And then what do you feel, because right now in the news, you're talking a lot about recession and real estate and all that craziness, which I don't think we're going to get into one. I mean, that's my opinion because of what's going on. Right. There could be one. Who knows? I mean, prices right now are so high. I have no idea. I thought we were going to go into a recession and the market was going to collapse with COVID, and it went the complete opposite way. So yeah, I just want to get pick your brain on that.
All right. So the second one is going to take a little bit of unpacking because it literally I can't call myself an economist because I don't have the background in the education, but I basically am an economist. It's what I study. So we'll hit that one in a second. But what is it that the wealthy do different? Well, here's the thing. We've all been taught to give up control of our money. We go work hard. We work hard and trade hours for dollars. And we take those dollars that we make and what do? Well, the average person puts it in the bank, in somebody else's bank. And then what does the bank do with that money? Well, the bank doesn't put it in the vault, doesn't put it in a little box with your name on it. The bank sends your money out to work for them. They loan that money out with mostly collateralized loans. And they make a spread on the money from what they pay you to what they actually charge you. I mean, it's kind of the same person, right? We put money in the bank and then what do? We go borrow money from the bank. It's awesome how smart banks are. So the one thing wealthy people don't do is they have changed who and where their money goes first. The second thing wealthy people figured out is if you always put a dollar value on your hours, you are always going to be limited in how much wealth you can have. Because trading an hour for $1 is backwards. Our hours are priceless. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you do. I don't care what level you're at. I don't care what your education is. Your hour that you have in this world is priceless. And you need to start understanding that because there's not a wealthy individual that doesn't fully understand that their hours are priceless. Now they'll give you the hours, but they say no more than they say yes so that they can say yes to the right thing. So that's the first thing you need to understand. But now the most important thing is if their hours are priceless and they don't want to trade hours for dollars, what do? Well, because of all the years that they've amassed money and they all follow 6 laws of wealth. Okay. The first law is they've gotten to the point where they're saving money. And the rule is law number 1 is you have to save 1/10 of the money that you earn gross. So they save that money. And when they save that money, they don't do what we do. They don't put that money in banks and let the bank make 400 to 1,300% on their money. They send that money out to work for them. But before they send it out to work, they change where the money goes first. And you'd have to study the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the JP Morgans, the Stanleys of the world, all of them. You'd have to understand how they built a banking system, not using banks. They built it using insurance companies. And there's lots of material out there. You can read my book. You can read, there's tons of them. This isn't something new. They started to create a banking system using insurance companies because insurance companies are in the business of providing guarantees. Banks, are they in the business of guaranteeing anything? Yeah, they're guaranteeing that you're going to stay broke if you keep giving them your money. So insurance companies can pay a higher interest rate on the money you put there. But we all know you can't just waltz into Mass Mutual or any of the big mutually owned insurance companies and say, hey, I'm here. I want to deposit my money. No, you have to find a way to create a banking system within the insurance company using their vehicles. And what the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and we'll throw in the bankers, the Morgans and the Stanleys, they figured out that they can create a banking system using a vehicle that was not intended for banking, but can be created and engineered as banking. And that is a product called whole life insurance. Now, before your audience starts to say, oh, that's terrible. Hold on a second. We're not talking about the whole life insurance that you buy at the insurance store. We're not talking about the whole life insurance I sold as an advisor. We're talking about a completely different type of whole life that is designed and engineered backwards. It's not primarily used for life insurance. It's used as a mechanism to store capital or currency and then take that money out immediately in the next 30 days. So that Mike guy that I was talking about at Cheesecake Factory is incredibly wealthy. If I gave you his name, you'd all know him. He had a TV show on HG or on A&E. But anyway, he taught me this. Now I want you all to remember something. When I learned this, I was a financial advisor of 14 or 15 years at that point. And when I heard this, I said the same thing all of you are thinking. I said, there's no way this is possible. Whole life insurance can't work that way. And what he told me blew my mind. He said, if it doesn't work that way, how am I doing it? And I said, teach me. He couldn't. He said, you have to talk to the guy that set this up for me. And I met Brent, and Brent then became my mentor and taught me everything I know today. And I still work closely with Brent in doing this. But here's the deal. I want you to all envision something. And then I promise we'll get to the second one, but this is very critical and important. I want you to imagine that there's a place where you can take your hard-earned dollars that you work for, you trade hours for. And instead of putting it in the bank, what if you changed one thing and you changed where that money went? We take this money and we put it into a specially designed and engineered whole life. Now, from here on out, I'm not going to call it a whole life anymore. I'm going to say your private banking system, because that's really what the wealthy call it. We take that money and we put it there. Now, what's changed? Number one, the insurance company is going to pay you a guaranteed interest rate. Right now, it's between 3 and 4%. Okay. Not only that, they're going to pay you dividends every single year, which gets you up around 6%. I don't know a bank in this country, or let alone in any country, that pays you between 5 and 6% on your money to leave it there. But that's only part of the equation. Okay. Now just imagine I'm then going to take this money that I just put into that privatized bank, and I'm going to take that money out immediately in the next 30 days. So let's just say I put in 10 grand and I take out 3, just for simple math. I'm waving $300 bills. Let's just pretend it's 3 grand. And I take this 3 grand and I go and I pay off the Visa card that I've been paying whatever, 20% interest on every single month. So I paid Visa off. Now I no longer owe Visa the $100 a month that I used to give them in interest payments, but I take the $100 a month that I used to give to Visa and I just change the name on the check and I write Chris Naugle's bank. Take that $100, I set up a bill pay, and I take that money and I put it back into my private bank, repaying the money that I took out of my bank at a rate of whatever I used to pay Visa, same dollars. But if Visa was charging me 20, I just recaptured 20%. People go out there and they chase unrealistic returns and they take unbelievable amounts of risk on investments when the easiest money to make is just take back the money you're giving away. This is what I learned. And then I took that, and now today I use my private banking system to lend money on private loans through the Private Money Club. I finance my cars, and I drive really nice cars, gentlemen, and I finance all the cars. But it doesn't matter what kind of car I buy. It doesn't matter what the monthly payment is, because the monthly payment that I make on my cars and my wife's car, it goes back to my bank. So if my monthly payment's $1,800 a month, does it even matter? No, because every month, $1,800 makes it back into my banking system, not M&T banks, not Wells Fargo's, my bank. And all I had to do was capitalize my bank, save enough money by following law number 1. And then law number 2 of wealth is I have to make that money go to work for me. And I can make that money go to work by paying off debt and recapturing the money I give away on the credit cards, the lines of credits, and any loans that you guys have. Just take that money back first. Then I can invest that money into things that I know, like, and understand. This is the critical thing. Today, it blows my mind. We're going to get to the second one right now. It blows my mind that people invest in things that they have no knowledge about. They're not even really that excited about it. Just somebody told them, oh, that you make a lot of money in this. So they don't know, they don't like, and they don't understand the things that they invest money in. And they just think by a miracle, a chance, they're going to get rich doing that. I'll promise you, if you do that, you will not be wealthy, because your money will always flee you, because you're violating the 3rd and the 4th law of wealth. 3rd law of wealth is protect your wealth. Invest in things you know, like, and understand, or invest with people that have knowledge, wisdom through time and failure. 4th law of wealth is do not seek unrealistic returns, or your money will flee you. I didn't get into that in my story, but folks, I've gone out and sought unrealistic returns, and I've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars chasing big returns. I don't do that anymore. You know what I chase today? 7 to 12%. That's all I care about. If I make 12%, man, I'm cracking a bottle of champagne because I'm psyched. Most people would be like, that's nothing. I'm getting that in DeFi. I'm getting that in Bitcoin. I'm getting that in this. Yeah, you are. But wealthy people, you know what they don't do? They don't give their wealth back. Rich people that call themselves rich, you know the difference between rich and wealthy? Wealthy know how to keep their money. Rich call themselves rich, act rich, and then when bad things happen, all the money flees them. All right, so now you really want to go down this rabbit hole of the second one, and I'll try to do this.
By the way, loved everything you just said. So
yeah,
I feel like we're going through a mastermind workshop.
No, I'm taking notes right now. Yeah, go in.
Listen, guys.
Let's get into it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like this stuff changed my life and thousands of other people that we teach. and it will change everybody's life if they just follow these simple things. And I've got, a fourth book is coming out. It'll be a book I'm writing for my daughter on these laws of wealth and how I'm going to teach them to her. But the second one, when you mentioned recession, so now you got to remember I'm 44. So I've been through a couple recessions vividly. I was a financial advisor through Great Recession, and I was a business owner through the dot-com crash. The pandemic was interesting. So if you follow cycles, okay, if you look at Ray Dalio, just go to YouTube and watch The Economic Machine. It's a video all of you should watch. It's 20 or 30 minutes long. It explains how the economy works. There are different cycles, and as an advisor, every advisor should know and understand this. Most ignore it. The cycles are this. Number one, there's a short-term debt cycle, and then number two, there's a long-term debt cycle. Both of you and myself have seen short-term debt cycles. They usually happen every 5 to 7 years. We saw it from the dot-com crash to the Great Recession. We saw it every period. If you go back in time, you'll pair it up. It's the longest history or period of time in history is where we're in right now. And that should have ended during the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, we broke the resistance levels. We were on our way to a recession, which would have made perfect sense. By the math, by history, all the way back to, heck, you can go back as long as you want. It always happens this way, the short-term debt cycle. But what happened during that, right? The pandemic hit, we got locked down, businesses were shut down from doing business, and the government not even the government, let's really talk about who was behind this. It was the Federal Reserve. If you guys don't understand that the Fed is separate from the US government, you need to learn a lot. Read The Creature from Jekyll Island that will fully explain the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve prints money, but actually they don't. Treasury prints money, but the Federal Reserve controls the flow of money. They decide how much money is going to be printed. They decide monetary policy and interest rates. During that pandemic, it gave the Fed the ultimate ticket to print a lot of money. We all know this. You read this. Printed $5.1 trillion. And I don't know if you guys understand the magnitude of how much money that is, but it's too much. And a matter of fact, it's actually over $8 trillion if you go back to 2008, because we never fixed the problems of the Great Recession. We just put a Band-Aid on. So now $5.1 trillion was printed. That 5.1 was printed by the Treasury and dispersed by the Fed. And where did that money go? Well, it went to the US government and it went to the capital markets. We call it Wall Street. Central banks distributed it into Wall Street. And how that happens is there's an exchange. Just picture an X. They print the money and the Fed then gives it to the US government, and the US government trades government debt called Treasury bonds. And those Treasury bonds right now sit on the Federal Reserve's balance sheet to the tune of about $8.9 trillion. That's how much the Fed right now has on their balance sheet of US debt. Okay, now just to put that into retrospect, if you took the top 5 nations, Japan, China, UK, I'm going to miss the other couple, but there's 2 other ones, and you added it all up, it doesn't even come close to how much the Fed has. China has just about 1.1 trillion in debt from the US, Japan about 1.3 trillion. So you're probably thinking to yourself, what the hell are you talking about, dude? Well, here's what I'm talking about. The Fed just announced at the beginning of this year their plans, what they plan to do to slow this rampant inflation down, because we're at 8.5%. We've seen this before in the late 70s, early 80s, but we're seeing it again right now because they printed 5.1 trillion. Inflation is not the thing, does not mean prices go up. Inflation means your dollars buy less. When they print $5.1 trillion, your dollars that you work for buy less. The purchasing power of these dollars went down when they printed 5.1. So inflation is nothing more than a hidden tax. The government loves it. So when you hear in the news and CNN and all these stations saying, oh, the Fed wants to slow inflation down, bullshit. They love inflation. Inflation allows the government to pay back debt at pennies on the dollar. Think about it. If they devalue $100 down to $1, they get to pay back $100 in debt for $1. It's a great business plan. We all wish we could do that. So here's why I'm going to call your bluff on this recession. We absolutely will see another recession. We will see it inside the next 2, no more than 3 years. But I don't think it's going to be a recession. Now, this is me speculating. I think you're going to see the next Great Depression. And here's why. Right now, we have been in this unbelievable bull run for the longest period in history. Everybody has enjoyed great returns in their stocks, great appreciation in real estate. I've benefited. I've sold most of my rental portfolio in this last run up, and it's been wonderful. And we've all made a lot of money. But the buck stops right here, because right now, they're raising interest rates 7 times this year. You'd have to study history to understand that that hasn't really been done to this tune. In 1 year, they typically have never raised rates more than 7 times, okay? And they're going to. First raise was 25 basis points. This next one that they're going to be announcing soon is going to be 0.5%. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see 0.5% increases until they tame the beast called inflation or, the runaway economy. But that's not what's going to crash the market. That will slow everything down. That'll make your cars more expensive to finance. That'll make your loans more expensive. And that certainly will make your real estate cost more, because a 30-year mortgage, if you've been tracking it, last year you could have got it about 3.5. Now a 30-year fixed is over 6%. And folks, they've only raised interest rates 25 basis points, 0.25%. And that was the impact. And they're going to do that 6 more times. So just brace yourself. So if they raise interest rates, that's going to stunt real estate. And I'm a real estate investor. I don't want anyone to think I'm poo-pooing real estate. I think it's the greatest investment on earth, but I think there's a right time to buy and a wrong time to buy. And I also think there's a right strategy and a wrong strategy. And right now, if you're not buying long-term, meaning longer than 10-year rental portfolios, you're making a massive mistake, because the value of your house where it is today is not what it will be worth next year, the year after, it will be significantly less. So that's the first part. Now let's hit what's really going to drive the recession. And that's called the long-term debt cycle. We haven't ever seen one in our lifetime. Last one is 1933. It's a 50 to 75 year period. And we are at the end of it. Matter of fact, we're past the end. So this debt cycle, we're already on the way back down the other side. And now the Fed, not only are they going to raise interest rates, but they also announced that they're going to unwind the balance sheet. We've seen turbulence in the markets because of this. And they just recently said they're going to unwind $95 billion in government bonds and mortgage-backed securities. They're going to unwind it, meaning they're going to sell it into the open market. Gentlemen, do you guys remember the movie Spaceballs? Mm-hmm. Okay, you remember the part where, Helmet's big bad ship rolls up to that planet. They didn't call it Earth, but it was Earth, where everybody was living, and it was perfect. Remember the ship turns into a vacuum, connects to the Earth, and starts sucking all the air out? Yeah, so I want you to envision that. The Fed's selling $95 billion of bonds in the open market as the vacuum cleaner in Spaceballs. They're going to suck the liquidity back out of the market to the tune, if they do it for 12 months, of over $1 trillion. They printed 5, and in 1 year, they're going to suck a little over $1 trillion out. In 2 years, they will have sucked 2.28. I doubt they'll go 2 years with it. But then that doesn't mean anything to your listeners and probably to you. But if we study history and we look at all the other times the Fed's done this, I think there's about 7 times they've done this. Every time except for one has resulted in a deep recession. So you got all these things. Longest bull run in history. We're at the end of a short-term debt cycle. We're at the end of a technology cycle. We're at the end of the long-term debt cycle. We have 7 rate increases coming this year, which will slow the economy down, followed by sucking money out of the economy and out of the markets through the unwinding of the balance sheet of $95 billion. On top of that, you right now have runaway inflation. And to wrap it all up, just a few weeks ago, you saw the yield curves invert. That is a telltale that's the death cross right there. When that happened, we have a recession coming. The question is when, and I can't give you that answer, gentlemen. But we will see it. I promise you.
So so that's like leads me to 2 questions, and I'm sorry, Anthony.
No,
so
go for it.
How do you hedge against that downside risk of an inflation of the Great Depression? And then second, going back into what you were talking about, the whole life insurance. Let's say you have, significant money behind that. You start, implementing that strategy of whole life. Is there type of within the contract any mechanism that protects you from that downside? So if the market collapses, will they guarantee that 7 or 12% that you were talking about? So that would be my second one. And then the first one was how do you hedge against that downside?
That playbook?
So the playbook's super easy, folks. And it's easy. You just do what they've done in the past during recessions. So during recessions, the average person sees it as a terrible time. They lose their jobs. Maybe they lose some assets. Their 401ks take a hit. But wealthy, or the smart money, gets incredibly wealthy. They make more money during a recessionary period. Yeah, of course it's true. It's happened every time. So if you want to know how to hedge this or how to get on top of this, you just do what they do. And I'll tell you, here's what you do right now, and nobody will believe me, but it's right in the Series 7 exam, and I'll tell you exactly how to play this game. So two things. Number one, you need to keep your money in safe assets right now. I'm not talking cash. Ray Dalio says cash is trash. I don't know if I fully believe that, but I wouldn't have money in the stock market right now. Like, you got to remember, folks, number one, I was an advisor for 16 years. I know the stock market very well. I have a full-time trader that runs my private hedge fund. I know the stock market incredibly well. How much money do you think I have in Wall Street right now? Zero. Not one penny. Not a single stock, not a single ETF, I'll talk about the ETFs in a second, but not a single mutual fund, not one. And I can tell you there's a lot of very wealthy people that don't have a single penny in the markets right now. Or if they do, they have longer than a 10-year time horizon on that, like the Warren Buffetts of the world. Listen, like, the best way to make money is time. And if you got time on your side, great. But the problem is most people think they do, but they don't because of investor sentiment and fear. So the way to beat it is, number one, move your money. Your money has to be in a constant state of motion. So if you got money sitting in a 401k, money sitting in a brokerage account, money sitting in, anywhere, a bank account, sitting idle, you're losing money, and that is not the way to do it. You need to move it. So how I do it is I do it with secured assets. I follow the playbook of the banks. I loan money out. Okay. And there's no secret about this. I do it in a first secured position, 60% LTV. And I do it on loans of less than 12 months. I will never lend right now longer than 12 months. So I've got, number one, my time horizon, because if the market lets go, I know real estate has 6 to typically 9 months of a runway before that starts to head down the other side. So move money. Number two, the only thing I have in my Schwab, my TD Ameritrade, and my private hedge fund's different. That invests in private companies, but is treasury bonds. Okay. So I buy treasury bonds, and I buy lots and lots of them. And I've been buying them because the price of them have been going down, down, down. Because treasury bonds, just to understand this, you guys can look this up. When interest rates go up, like what they are right now, treasury bond prices go down. Okay. So just picture an X, interest rates up, price of bonds down. So Warren Buffett said what? He said, buy low. Well, that's what I'm doing. I'm buying treasury bonds, which are guaranteed by the US government, and I'm buying them on the swing down. I have no intentions of holding these 20 or 30-year bonds for 20 or 30 years. I'll be out of them in a year, no more than 2. Because here's what will happen, and what happens every other time in history. As we enter this next cycle, where the market starts to go down, some stagflation is one word, deflation is another word. Let's just call it an economic slowdown and a recession. When that happens and the market goes the other way, let's look at the Fed and the US government's playbook that they played during the pandemic, because we all know that. What was the very first lever that the Fed pulled to stimulate the economy during the pandemic? Do you remember?
What was the first lever? They increased the money supply. They started putting more money out there.
Before they did that.
They dropped rates.
Bingo. They lowered interest rates. The very first lever the Fed will always pull is interest rates. Make money cheap, then increase the money supply. So there's more cheap money out there. That almost always stimulates the economy, which is why we didn't crash in the pandemic. But they had a reason to print money, which some people could say, well, you got a war. That would be a good reason. And indeed it would. I just don't think they have enough backing that would actually get that through, but maybe. Okay. So now we talked about how to buy them. You're going to buy it when they're going down, which is when interest rates are going up. Now, when the market tanks and starts to head down, not like it is the last couple days or weeks, that's nothing compared to what you're going to see. What will happen is the Fed will then drop the interest rate hammer. That's why they're trying to get them up so fast so they can pull them back down to stop the next recession. Now, does it make sense? It's not inflation that they're trying to do like they tell you. It's they know this is coming. And they got to get the ammunition stockpiled. Ammunition stockpiled is interest rates. So when they drop interest rates down to close to zero, which indeed they probably will when we enter this next cycle, your bonds that you just bought on the way down will have an inverse relationship to interest rates. Remember, interest rates go up, price goes down. So what do you think happens when interest rates go down to the price of your bonds? Shoots up. If you did the math on a 30-year bond, and you can speculate on the numbers, your return would be anywhere between 30 and 50% increase in the bonds if we went from where we're at today in interest rates to close to zero where we were during the pandemic, risk-free. So right there, I just gave you the golden goose. Okay. The only thing you got to do, which is hard, is patient. You have to wait. You have to wait for it. And the privatized banking is where most of my money is stored, because insurance companies, if you study where their money is, it's not in Wall Street, it's in treasury bonds, always has been. Insurance companies are one of the largest bond holders of the US government debt because that's all they buy. They have to protect people and provide guarantees out for hundreds of years. How do you do that? Well, you make sound investments, long-term investments longer than me, you, or anyone listening to this podcast can ever make. Insurance companies aren't betting on tomorrow or 5 years. They're betting on 100 to 200 years later. That's why they've been around for hundreds of years. They make smart, safe investments. They lend money in first secured position. They own lots of real estate. Most of the skyscrapers are not owned by banks, folks. Banks might put their name on it, but they rent or they borrow money from insurance companies. So insurance companies are one of the biggest purchasers of treasury bonds. I've been in this industry a long time. You know who else is one of the biggest purchasers of treasury bonds? Are banks. But you know what else banks buy in their tier one capital? And you can look it up. The top 5 banks in this country have over 75 billion in one thing that most of you would gawk and think that that's impossible. It's called whole life insurance. Look it up. Google BOLI, B-O-L-I, bank-owned life insurance. The top 5, I didn't say all of them, the top 5 have $75 billion in whole life. It's why you have so many vice presidents. So a bank, and I'm getting to your second question. Notice how I'm just paralleling right into your second part of that. We're talking about life insurance. Does life insurance have these safeguards, these guarantees, these things in the contract that make sure that when we do enter a depression, if we ended up going that deep, are they protected? Absolutely. Why? Because they've got safe investments that actually make more money during recessionary or depressionary periods. Plus the other thing, during a depression or a recession, whichever you want to call it, okay, the only people that typically have money to lend are insurance companies. Banks go to the insurance companies like they did in 08 and they borrow money. The insurance companies seem to bail out everybody because they have all the money. Banks don't have money. They have your money. They're borrowing your money and they're making your money go to work for them. We already talked about that. Insurance companies, they don't borrow your money. They got their own money. It's real money. And that money's out there working for them. And a large chunk of it is in treasury bonds. And they understand what I just taught you. So will insurance companies go down in a recession or depression? No, most of the big ones, which are the only ones we can use for the privatized banking, will actually get stronger, just like they do in every other recessionary period. And these are giant mutually owned insurance companies. Okay. You know the names, you've seen them. And we only can use about 10 of them because only 10 of them will participate and do what we need them to do for the privatized banking systems that I was talking about. And we use them exclusively. And during the Great Depression, I mean, Walt Disney World, which we all know and have been to, research and watch, how did Walt Disney start Walt Disney World or Disneyland, I think it was, alone from his whole life insurance policy? How did Doris Christopher start Pampered Chef that she sold to Warren Buffett? Her whole life policy. You could go all the way back through history. How did Biden fund a lot of his political campaign? Whole life insurance. How about McCain? Whole life insurance. Warren Buffett, does he own an insurance company? Yes. It's one of his greatest investments and he wished he had more. Listen, folks, I'm not telling you anything new. I'm not trying to change your mind of how you view things. Just look at what's going on around you. When you open your eyes and you see what the wealthy do, that's what they're doing, folks. They're doing the opposite of what you're doing.
Powerful, man. I'm mind blown right now, just because this is the type of information that you don't see a lot of people really tapping into.
There's no money in it. That's why.
And that's what I wanted to ask you.
It's insane. And this was going to go to my next thing. Well, what do you think about all these people now with the whole craze of parking their money in crypto and NFTs? What's your whole thought about this whole spectrum? Maybe you can shine some true light on this, whether it's something you like or you don't like.
Well, I mean, I'm a fan of Bitcoin and Ethereum, and you notice how I only talked about 2 of them. I think a lot of the shit coins and ones out there, they'll be gone soon or whatever in the future. They won't be around, and you're just seeking unrealistic returns, which law number 4 says what? Your money will flee you. But I do think the technology, the blockchain, and the problems that Ethereum and Bitcoin solve are sound. I think you're going to see a ton of volatility just like you have. So I buy Bitcoin and I buy lots of it, but I don't buy it the way that these people do that you're referring to. They buy it with the anticipation of it going to the moon, and they don't have an exit. You see, I come from Wall Street. Everything I buy is calculated. I know what I'm getting out at it. When the pandemic hit, I bought tons of stocks. I bought Tesla and I don't own it anymore. I sold it when I hit my target price. And people would be like, well, that was stupid. No, really? Because I've never met a single billionaire that said making money was stupid. And I make money. I might not make as much if I would have if I held it, but I make money consistently and persistently, and that's the name of the game. Bitcoin, I trade the levels. Okay, when it went down to 28, I bought a big chunk. Okay, and I ended up selling it. I was at a conference out in Utah. A hedge fund manager got up and he just said something about Bitcoin. He was asked the same question, and he says Bitcoin has no intrinsic value. The Fed, is out to get Bitcoin because it challenges the dollar, or more XRP if you follow really what happened there. So therefore, Bitcoin will take a big fall. It was at 44,000 that day. My target was 46. I sold it all and I made a bunch of money. I bought it at 20. I bought it from 30 down to 28 and I sold it at 43. Do the math. Right now, I've been buying it at this 38,000 level. I have a coach on my team, and that's all he does is crypto. And he thinks we're going to have one more pull, one more push up, and he's targeting 50 to 60, which I think he's optimistic. But I'll be out at about 48. So, and it's going to have one more pull, and then it's going to take the big plunge. It's correlated to the markets. I think Bitcoin is going to be around. So if you got a long-term time horizon, I look at Bitcoin just like I would have looked at Amazon back in the late 90s and the early 2000s. We're at the early stage of this. Okay. The only pressures you have to be ready for is lots of volatility. You better have a high threshold of tolerance for risk, because we might be at 38 today, but during what I'm talking about, when it happens, it could go down to 10, 15. That would be a target price. Mm-hmm. But what should you do when it gets around 10 to 15 and on the way, all the way down, dollar cost average into it? So I'm a fan of it. I think it's going to be challenged by the US coming out with a digital dollar, just like China is. I think you're going to have lots of major hurdles to overcome with Bitcoin. And I think one of the biggest problems why Munger and Buffett don't like it and openly speak down on it is it has zero intrinsic value. So if you're an old school investor that believes in fundamentals, Bitcoin, any of the cryptos, they have none of that. There are no fundamentals. It is simply built on investor confidence. And when you lose investor confidence, as Munger and Buffett say, you will lose Bitcoin. So if I had a choice, would I invest in Bitcoin or real estate? Real estate every day. Mm-hmm. But if you're investing in real estate right now, understand you're buying at the top. And understand that your price of your real estate will go down. No problem if you're renting. Your rents will be just fine. Just stress test your rental portfolio to the tune of a 10 to 15% drop in rents, and make sure that you don't and won't need liquidity out of your real estate for at least the next 5 years. And if you think I'm wrong, let's have a discussion after 5 years. No, and I'll bet awesome. Any amount of money I'm right.
This is great information. This is very great information. This is going to go on to another question I have. So you're somebody who's, let's say, an average individual, and let's just throw the number out there. You're making about 100, K a year, which again, that's maybe even a little bit more above than the average individual, but you're making anywhere between 70 to 100. Let's say that. How would you spread, your what you're making and start putting into certain investments? And where's a good starting point for an individual like that who maybe doesn't have a lot to play with, but they have a little bit? Where would you go first? Where would be that first recommendation? And then how do you expand from there?
Sure. It's a great question. So, and I don't care if it's 100 and someone's like, oh, I wish I was there. I don't care if you got 50 grand. Okay. The first thing to understand is if you're going to invest money, before you ever put a penny in any investment, understand what your needs and goals are and understand what your risk tolerances are. Can you accept a 10, 20, 30, 40% loss? Are you investing money that you can afford to lose? That's the first thing you should always be asking yourself. And the second thing you should really look at, and now getting to where you put that money, where does your money go every single month? So if you're looking to invest and you're a new investor, maybe you've been doing it a couple of years and you're trying to figure out the path. Have you done a budget? Do you know where your income goes every single month? Because I bet you if you did, you'd find that a huge percentage, a large amount of the money you make is going out the door to somebody else, usually somebody else's bank. Okay. Credit cards, lines of credit, car payments. Everybody's rushing out and buying cars right now. They're one of the worst investments on earth. The way I buy cars, I get every dollar back for every car that I buy driving home. Matter of fact, I'll give this to your audience. We'll give them 2 books. I'll give them this one, Drifting Away from Traditional Car Buying. It's like Grant Cardone's little booklet. It's 60 pages. Teach you how to get all the money back for every car you buy driving home. Yeah, I'll give it to you for free. And then this one too, Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery, is exactly what privatized banking is and the infinite banking concept. You guys can have those for free. But let's get back to the question is, I would look at where your money goes. Right now, if you have credit cards that you're paying interest on, which you are, because it's not a credit card that's out there that doesn't charge you interest. Oh, I'm on one of those 0% credit cards. Yeah, for how long? A year at most. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the first place I would invest money, which is not investing, is I would pay your debts off, because what's going to save you and put you in a great place to enter a recessionary period is get rid of debt. Debt is what takes every company down and every individual down during a recession. So the first place to start is don't invest your money. Clean up your balance sheet. Get rid of the debts. And the best way to do it is very simple. You've heard it from Ramsey. Okay. Start with the lowest balance, not the highest interest rate, the lowest balance. Pay it off. But don't stop there. This is where people make the mistake. They stop by paying the credit card off. They feel, oh yeah, great. Now I don't have to pay that. Take one additional step. Go to your bank. Now, I told you about the privatized banking. That's where the money should go. But let's just keep it simple for today. Okay. Go to your bank, wherever you bank, and open up a second bank account. I learned this from a book called Profit First. Open a second bank account. When you pay that credit card off, what I want you to do is the exact dollar amount every month, 25 or 50 bucks a month that you were giving to Visa or whatever the card is. I want you to then do a bill pay or a transfer, set it up automatically, out of sight, out of mind, for that same dollar amount to go into this newly created checking account. Okay. So now you're going to recapture and recycle all the money you were giving away to that credit card. Now what I want you to do is I want you to then take the money in that new bank account when it gets to the point where it's enough to pay off the next credit card, plus the money that you're saving and you wanted to invest, pay the next one off and the next one and the next one. Just rinse and repeat. Every time you pay a credit card off, the exact amount you gave that credit card or that debtor goes into this newly created segregated bank account. And you just keep repeating that. Folks, I can't give you the magic. Like, there is no silver bullet of an investment, but what I just told you is your fastest way to wealth. The wealthiest people out there, now they leverage debt, but I'm not talking about mortgages and leveraging debt. I'm talking about bad debts, credit cards, some lines of credit, the ones that cost you a lot. Car loans are one of the worst too. When you pay those off, recycle that money. Now imagine, like, take your car, gentlemen. How much is your car payments? Let's get this out in the air.
Let's go. I pay $297 exactly a month.
Okay. So $297, do you know what your interest rate is?
I don't remember exactly I don't remember the exact amount. I'd be lying to you right now if I told you. If I remember the exact amount. I'm about to pay off the car soon too.
Mine's is 3%. I have it with
yeah, there we go. 3%.
Love it.
I got minus 3% too.
Perfect. All right. So you got a 3% loan. Now that's cheap money, right? Most people would say that's cheap. But how much was the monthly amount that you're paying every month?
$297.
$297 is leaving your family forever. So let's just say right now you had that money sitting in a bank account and you were thinking, all right, should I invest this money or should I pay off the car? I would always tell you, pay the car off. Take the $297 you pay to whatever the finance company is and put that money back in that segregated account. Now, I know that's only a 3% return, but it's the cash flow you're after. You just recaptured $297. That'll add up over the year. And every year that you recapture that money, you now have that money in the account that you then can invest. When you invest money, you should invest in things you know, like, and understand. So if you're already past all the credit and all that stuff is gone, you're like, all right, yeah, but I don't have any debt. I'm ready to invest. Great. What is it that you know, like, and understand? Like, what do you love? Oh, I love this, or I love that. Great. That's what you invest in. Get really good at one or two industries of things that you really love and invest in those. And don't stray outside of that. And then when you want to enter a new territory, maybe it's Bitcoin, but you don't know a lot about Bitcoin, find the person that's the best at Bitcoin that has failed at Bitcoin, okay? Because you can't be successful if you haven't failed, and have wisdom in Bitcoin through time, okay? So somebody that's been doing it for a while, and then have them guide you in that. So I might be really, really, like, you know, I don't get the nickname America's #1 money mentor. I didn't come up with that, believe me. Like, I get that because these things that I teach are things that nobody else will teach you, because there's no money in any of this. There's no money in you going out and buying treasury bonds. Your advisor would tell you not to do that because they can't get paid on it. Just like when I was an advisor, I would have never told you to buy treasury bonds. Like, no, dude, you got to buy this mutual fund or this because I get paid more. Sorry, that's the truth, folks. But once you become a good steward of your money and you start investing in things you know, like, and understand, the second thing, if you truly want wealth, I'll tell you how to get it. Invest with a long-term time horizon in things you know, like, and understand. Don't invest for quick riches, for quick gains. You will lose your money every time. You might get lucky one or two times. It's gambling. It's legal. The stock market is the worst form of legal gambling that there is. And too many people, pretty soon, you're going to see it, are going to lose everything to it because they're investing blindly with no direction, with no entry point, no exit point. They don't even know where they're going to exit it. They're just buying for some magical day where they're going to sail off into the sunset. So I know I went long on that and I apologize. I get so frustrated that I just can't get through people's thick skulls. Making money, building wealth is so easy, guys. So easy. Just the roadmap's been there since before Christ. Follow it. Read The Richest Man in Babylon. You want to really understand it? Read it a couple times. It's the roadmap. Okay. Just follow the laws of wealth and you cannot not become wealthy. But the problem is you'll get greedy. And when you get greedy and you start going after unrealistic returns, your money flees you. Trust me, every time it will happen. Don't believe me?
Wow,
Give
Chris.
it time.
What can I say about this segment? What a powerful podcast today. Guys, I'm telling you right now, if you did not find at least one thing out of here, you are crazy. You are crazy. This was definitely hands down one of our most favorite segment that we've done. Definitely in a long time. And I've got to say, it's just so power value driven. And most importantly, there's so much upfront raw value to it where it's just, I want to help you out. I want to help people out. And what I love about this is that you won't find this kind of information just anywhere, which goes to the reason why you have that title to your name. And I just want to personally say thank you. I know Bryan as well, as we wrap things up. But I also want to give you the moment to share with our listeners and our viewers, where can they find you? Where can they connect with you? Where can they find more of this information? What resources and even work with you, to help them, create this pathway to success and wealth?
Well, I also want to thank you guys because you gave me your time. And again, time is priceless. So kudos to that. And kudos to all your listeners for giving their time to listening to this. And hopefully they got some good knowledge. I'm easy to find, folks. I'm on every social media platform you can find. I'm not hard to find. I'm verified on just about all of them, hundreds of thousands. Just go to Instagram, TikTok, whatever you like. I put free content out every single day. It's at the Chris Naugle. But most importantly, that'll get you excited. You'll see a bunch of videos. My YouTube channel is my heart and soul. Everything I do, I put a ton of money. I spend tens of thousands of dollars a month creating content for YouTube. And it's free. It's all free. So go to YouTube and dive deep into it. Subscribe to that channel. It's at the Chris Naugle. And getting down to the brass tacks, I told you I was going to give you a couple books. Now, I'll give you all 3 books because they're all on one place. So the book on how to get all the money back for every single car you ever buy, drive, and own. Truthfully, that's what it teaches you. Okay. Mapping out the millionaire mystery, the secrets of infinite banking and how it can work for you. And then my first book, The Private Money Guide, which teaches you all about private money. You can get them all. Just go to chrisnaugle.com, my website. There's no sales. There's nothing you can buy. Pay the shipping if you want the physical copy of the book. I'm not paying for the shipping to get the book to your house, but if you want the ebooks, they're all free. And not only that, when you go to my website, there's going to be a video that's going to pop up. It's a 90-minute video. Remember I told you that thing I learned from Mike and then the Brent guy that taught me about privatized banking? I learned that by watching a 90-minute video. I made that same 90-minute video I watched back in 2014. That video will change your life. Watch the video. And if you want to have a conversation with me or my team, book a call. But here's what I want to prepare you for. Do not book a call if you think if you want to be sold something. We don't sell you anything. We're going to answer your questions. If you, at the end of that, you determine that this will change your financial life, we will help you. But you will have to ask us to help you. We don't sell, we solve your problems. And if that's what you're after, you found the right place. Go to the website.
Wow. Thank you so much, Chris. There was a lot of gems you dropped in this pod, and to be honest, you scared me a little bit.
I know. It was kind of funny. You were like, I don't think it's coming. I'm like, oh boy.
We going into this rabbit hole.
I promise you it is. I just can't tell you when it'll be happening, but don't bet on this recession not happening. You will lose the bet. I promise you. Just look at the wealthy guys out there. Warren Buffett's calling it. Ray Dalio's calling it. Burry's calling it. I mean, there's not one economist out there that you can watch. Not one that isn't flashing the warning signs that a recession is imminent, not maybe coming, imminent. It's happening. It's happening right now.
Well, Chris, once again, we appreciate you. And like we always like to wrap it up on the podcast. What's just in one single sentence, what's the biggest of advice you can leave off to all our listeners today?
Yeah, it's easy. It's a quote by Will Rogers. The biggest problem in America is not what people don't know. The biggest problem is what people think they know that just ain't so.
Oh,
boom.
I love that.
Boom, boom, boom. Guys, like I said, if you got value out of this podcast today, just grab at least one thing, put it to work, put it into effect. Because I'll tell you right now, this will change your life. Not just a little bit, but it will change your life for the long term. And most importantly, don't wait till tomorrow. Don't wait till the next day. Start taking action today, because today is what counts. So if you got value to this, I appreciate if you drop us a like, leave a review, leave a rating. Show us some love, because the more love you show us, the more love we can show back. Till next time on the Sweat It Out podcast.